and welcome to 164forever.com's Overeaters Anonymous 101 podcast for newcomers. My name is Carol, and I am a recovered compulsive eater, and I'm here with a couple of fellows of mine. There's Rebecca A.
Hiya, I'm Rebecca A. from London in the UK. Really grateful to be here.
And Randy N.
Hi, Randy N. from South Florida. Also grateful to be here.
Okay, so this is our second podcast for newcomers, and we have an email address. So you can reach us at 164forever@gmail.com, and the 164 are numbers. We'd love to hear your feedback, or if you're a newcomer, just feel free to reach out. We also created a WhatsApp group, and you're going to find information on how you can join that in the description below. Disclaimer time. I'm going to start by saying that we are just compulsive eaters who found a solution to our problem by working the 12 steps in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do not represent Overeaters Anonymous as a whole, though we do consider ourselves members, nor do we speak for World Service or any intergroup or any 12-step meeting specifically. We're not experts or authority on recovery or the Big Book. We're just some OA members who are going to talk about what worked for us and share some things that we wish maybe someone shared with us early on. Like I said, this is our second podcast, so let's just see where this goes. Last week, we talked about the Serenity Prayer, literature, and WhatsApp, and we discussed how you may be able to figure out if you're a true compulsive eater or not. So if you're interested in listening to our first podcast, you can find it on the Overeaters Anonymous 101 podcast for newcomers playlist on our YouTube channel or 164forever.com in the blog roll. We have some great feedback from listeners and fellows in program, so I just want to start by thanking everybody who took time to listen to our first episode and give us such thoughtful and considerate feedback. So before we get to our newcomer Q&A portion, I just wanted to let you guys know that we are now available as a podcast on podbean.com, and you can find us at oa164forever.podbean.com. Now it is time for newcomer Q&A, and our first question is, I'm new to OA. I think I'm a compulsive eater. Where do I start and what do I do? Randy, would you like to take that first?
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about what I did when I was new to program, which let me just give you a very, very short background of myself, because what I did when I was new was wrong. So I have a lot of news in OA. I've been in program for about 8 years. And the first time I came in the door, I was very desperate. I binge eat and I ate significant amounts of food. I've been that way my whole life. At that time, I was about 29 years old. And I came in because it was the first time that I realized that, wow, what I'm doing is really not normal. And it took me, that was the first time I had that realization. So when I came in, I was quite desperate. And I went to a meeting and I said, I'm going to do whatever these people tell me to do. And I started doing what they told me to do. I got a sponsor. I think I made some mistakes in that area. Nothing wrong with the sponsor. It was all me. And what I did was say I'm going to do everything that they tell me to, which is the right thing to do. Right? I needed to find somebody that, or look for people in the program that I respected and do what they tell me to do, or were living a life that I wanted to live for myself. The problem was what I ended up doing is finding an amazing food plan that really helped with triggering a physical allergy. I'm not going to go into that here unless Carol wants to ask a follow-up question. And I did really good on that front. So the food I was eating wasn't causing me to want to eat more. And what I didn't do was work the steps of the program. Fast forward 8 years without telling you some things that happened in the middle. Those binges got worse. My insanity within my head, disliking myself, treating others poorly, all of that got much worse than when I came in day one. So what I did then was I came into the rooms and I said, I'm going to do what you tell me to do. And I did. I went back to a food plan that was helpful, and I worked the steps, and my life is significantly better than it was. I mean, there's not even a comparison. It's like I'm a different person. So don't do what I did at the beginning, do what I did at the end. And at least that worked for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Randy. I agree. I agree. And we'll get into some of those other details either later in this podcast or in a future podcast as well. Rebecca, what did you do when you were a newcomer? What worked for you?
Yeah, thanks, yeah, for your reflections there, Randy. Yeah, it's get a sponsor and work the steps. And yeah, I came in and did the thing that I see a lot of people doing, which is coming in and waiting to get this from the sky, gold, stellar plan of eating, which is going to solve my problems. Um, but the thing I found is I don't have a food problem. I've got a living problem. I have a life problem. I have this alcoholic mind. Um, so it doesn't matter if I had the most amazingly designed plan of eating, I would still have a problem, and I still wouldn't be able to follow it unless I get access to power and some help that I need. So yeah, what I did when I came in is I got a sponsor, and I did what she said. I did what I was told, and we worked the steps, and yeah, slowly but surely, I got my recovery. And I tried my best to stay in the middle of the fold, just keep going to meetings, keep on reaching out. When I saw people who sounded like they were well and they looked attractive to me, I wrote down their numbers and I got in touch and I was like, hey. And, yeah, it is a bit awkward making those calls first off. But you know what was more awkward? Being obese, killing myself with food, killing my relationships, killing my self esteem, killing my career. Yeah, it's awkward making those calls, but I think I was desperate enough that, yeah, I just put up with the awkward until, yeah, I started to enjoy making calls and reaching out to people and being seen, which, I can't remember a time when I enjoyed being seen. I think it's part of how the disease manifested in my life is I didn't want to be seen. Um, so yeah, that's what I did. Got a sponsor, worked the steps.
Great. Beautiful. I would echo what you guys are saying. For sure, what worked for me was when I actually got a sponsor and worked the steps. And I guess I wasn't even sure why at the time, but later I've come to, I use the analogy of like, a sci-fi movie, when they're flying through an asteroid belt and life is just full of so many asteroids that just crash into you. It can be like you're driving and someone flips you off, or my boyfriend hates how I load the dish drainer. I'm a bit of a abstract artist with the dish drainer, and he's always saying, no, if you put them in the right way, lots more fits and they don't fall out the sides. And he's just often very frustrated with it. So all these little things tend to happen throughout the day. And before, I guess I didn't even realize it, but now I see how much these things really affect me. And so by working the steps, I was able to leave the food down, because instead of letting these asteroids, these little problems or resentments build up throughout the day to where I was so frustrated and just wanted to tune out and eat, the steps gave me tools to be able to deal with them in a way that it just makes me a better person. Then I'm not lashing out. Then I'm not eating. It's constructive. And I have fellows all over the world at this point, thanks to Zoom, who are happy to talk to me and happy to hear me go over whatever happened for the day and what character defects were brought out, and help me to remember what's really important, and so I can get back to the work that I need to do.
That's absolutely right. I'm going to piggyback on your analogy of being this spaceship going through like an asteroid belt of life and emotions and events and circumstances. And then when you work the steps, it's like you get this force field, spiritual force field. So, you know, things are still kind of coming your way, and you still having your partner saying, oh, you put the dishes in a weird way or whatever. But, you know, it just doesn't hit you in the same way because you've got a
Exactly.
lot of acceptance, heart full of gratitude, an understanding of a higher power of your understanding, which we'll talk about later on, I guess. But yeah, force field,
Yeah, I
like
agree.
sci-fi rep.
How did you know which sponsor was right for you? How do people find a sponsor, and how do they know who is the right sponsor for them? Rebecca, would you like to take that one first?
Yeah, like yeah. What I did was, so I went to a meeting. I heard somebody saying my story. You know, I heard people talking about food the way that I was thinking about food, and you know that really struck me. You know, I recognized myself in what people were saying, so I came back to another meeting. I heard a really incredible speaker explaining to me about the urgency of working the steps and that this is a life and death matter, you know. And then, yeah, I kept on going to meetings and just jotting down people's numbers, jotting down numbers, reaching out. It was awkward, but that's how I got a sponsor. You know, I just, if somebody sounded like they were relatable and like I understood them and they were nice, I reached out and said, hey, could you sponsor me? And until I got a sponsor. So I'd recommend just trying to reach out to as many people who have what you want as possible. And I guess it takes a little bit of determination, a bit of tenacity, because, yeah, you might find that you're at your wits' end, because I was on my knees when I came into this program and I don't really want to talk to people, but that's the way to get a sponsor. So we kind of have to push through a bit.
Yeah,
Right.
I'll talk about my experience, and I feel like this is the second time I'm speaking here, and kind of going to go around the same route. But I'm going to tell you about the thing I did wrong and then the thing I did right. So when I first came into program, the first sponsor I chose was somebody who had a similar religious background to me, because I'm like, I thought that if it works for them, you know, and I can relate to them that way, then that'll help me recover. That didn't work. That person really didn't have recovery in program. That person did not have what I view today as this recovery glow. This just walking through life on a lighter plane. Just doesn't seem to use your analogies, being hit by all of those asteroids and just like reacting to the world instead of just having a calm presence about them. Then the second person I picked as a sponsor was someone who also didn't have recovery but had the same job I did. And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. You know, they can really relate to me. They also had a similar story. My father passed away when I was very young, and he had the same story with him. So I'm like, you know, we really get along. We can, you know, we can work with each other. What I've come to find out is that that person I described, that person that's going through life in a way that is admirable, um, almost the person when you come in and you're in the food or just coming out of the food or just stopping eating, um, it seems that the people who have recovery are almost faking it. Those people that are just too happy and too nice and too friendly, except it's real. It's just real. Those people are that way. Those people are kind to everyone. Those people are, if we're in the Zoom world, smiling the whole meeting, looking around. It's not an act. There's those people with the lightness about them, the ones that just look comfortable, the ones that talk about recovery in a way that makes you want what they have. That person inspired me. I found my sponsor in person. Happened to be a local, somebody local to me came and spoke at a meeting, and it was a 12-week series at my home group, and he just talked about the steps in a way that I had never heard it before. Um, and somewhat controversial, but Carol did give a disclaimer in the beginning. We don't speak for OA as a whole. Um, I would say that a requirement is that the sponsor works through the big book, or at least uses that as the primary source, because that is the heart of recovery. It's raw recovery. Those 12 steps change you from a person who is scared, self-hating, self-pity, um, and all of these other fearful was a huge one for me, into someone who could just, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm not obsessed with weight loss. I'm not obsessed with the scale. I try to go through a day feeling how I could be useful to people, and it brings joy into my heart. So finding a sponsor out of all of the tools of the program is probably the most important part for me.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Randy, because my sponsor, although a female like me, was very different from me. We had very different childhoods. She had a fairly secure and stable childhood with loving parents, and I had a little more turmoil, and I grew up without money for a lot of years. And I didn't think she would be able to relate to me, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to recover because I didn't have the same story as she did. But I learned that it doesn't matter how different my sponsor is from me, because she's just walking me through the big book, and the big book does not change dependent on your childhood or upbringing or past or personality or anything else. The big book is the big book, and it stays the same. So I realized that really all I needed was someone who was willing to take the time to answer my questions and walk me through the big book and just point in the direction that I needed to go. And then everything else was really up to me. It was up to me to do the work. It was up to me to put the food down. And it was up to me to grow my relationship with my higher power. So I would just say, you, like you guys said, you make outreach calls, and if you enjoy speaking to someone and they're recovered and they're abstinent and they're willing to take you through the big book, I just don't see why you wouldn't just start doing the work so you can get to the good stuff, get to the recovery and start sponsoring other people. So let's tackle one more question if we can before we tune out for the day. So the last question that I have for today is, how do I stop eating? Which is something I hear a lot from a lot of people. Randy, you want to try that one first?
Yeah, I'll speak about it quickly, because it's actually not something I had a problem with. I was the person who came into program and was able to stop on my own for a period of time. In the beginning, it was months. Then it turned down to weeks. Then it turned down to days. But I was always the person who could will myself for a period of time, enough to maybe get started in the program. Um, Here is when I came back to program after my last relapse, my sponsor said to me, and this is after about 7 years, right? He says to me, and I never stopped going to meetings this whole period of time. And he says to me, you've been going to meetings for a while, but it seems like you've never joined Overeaters Anonymous. So why don't you try joining? Right? Because I didn't have fellowship. I didn't keep in contact with people. I wasn't doing service. I wasn't doing outreach. I just thought that meetings would somehow help me, just showing up and trying to talk, and people think I'm smart, because that made me feel better about myself. And that doesn't help, right? So how I stopped eating is working the steps. And how I stop eating in the beginning is joining the program. It's a very common thing for sponsors to tell sponsees to make 3 outreach phone calls a day. That's just a common number for some reason we pick, right? Um, or at least my sponsor did, and I've heard the same for others. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's not. The point is that you need to go to meetings. You need to speak with your sponsor. You need to do outreach call. You need to do writing. You need to do reading. You need to be in program. And in the beginning, the way you limit your eating is to fill all of your free time with program, as much of your free time as possible. Because an addict mind left to wander is always going to wander, at least for someone with my disease, toward the food. If I can distract my mind from the food with the solution, that being Overeaters Anonymous, that being working the steps, then I could stay out of the food. So if you are having trouble staying out of the food, just dive fully in 100% into program.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I echo what Randy was saying. I've heard it shared a lot that if I apply a fraction of the energy I applied to my disease to recovering to this new program, so all of that time and efforts I spent buying foods, searching up recipes, searching up diets, searching up exercise regimes, feeling sorry for myself, searching up all sorts of things, doing all sorts of things to try and control this disease. If I spent a fraction of that time now doing what my sponsor says, working the steps, getting on the phone, going to meetings, trying a bit of service, even if it's small, I'd get recovery. So yeah, I definitely think how to stop eating involves just throwing yourself in, and ultimately, just like what Randy shared, the thing that's going to help you stay stopped is building a relationship with a power greater than yourself. Because I didn't have enough power to stop eating. I didn't have enough power to do that long term. And I tried to dig up a line from the big book that kind of sums it up. And here on page 45, in We Agnostics, it says, lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Yeah, we have to find that power, and the steps helps us do that. The big book is the source of that. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's what helped for me.
Yeah. I think you guys said it so well. For me, I used to dream about what I was going to have for breakfast when I went to bed at night, and I would dream about lunch while I was eating breakfast, dream about dinner while I was eating lunch. And really, I was thinking about food all day long. So to get out of the food, I had to get busy. I've heard people say when I got busy, I got better. And so just going to a lot of meetings, making a lot of outreach calls, and working my way through the big book and just really keeping busy with the business of recovery, and talking to people about my honest feelings and what was going on with me, really is how I was able to put the food down, at least in the beginning. It was harder, the first few weeks, and then it got much easier. And then now it takes, no effort right now, basically as long as I am working my program and sponsoring other people and doing all the things that I have been told by the big book that I need to do if I want to be relieved of my compulsion to eat. Thank you so much, guys. I think that brings this week's podcast to a close. A little hot tip of the day. If you haven't visited avisionforyou.info, the number 4, YOU.info. I just highly recommend that you check it out. They have daily big book meetings for compulsive eaters. And if you check out the portion on their website called Special Edition, you'll find a plethora of podcasts and lectures on every step, every chapter, just about any question you could think of that is about compulsive eating and the big book and how it speaks to our compulsion. So please come back next week where we're going to talk about a higher power of your own choosing and understanding, how long it should take to work the steps, and how and why we make so many outreach calls. So in closing, thanks so much to my co-hosts, Rebecca and Randy. You can email us at 164forever@gmail.com, and you can find us on Podbean. All the information you need is going to be in the description below the podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who listened last week and for sharing the podcast with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and join the WhatsApp group. If you are harming yourself with food, there is a solution. We found our solution in the rooms of Overeaters Anonymous, which can be found at oa.org. And again, we don't represent Overeaters Anonymous or any other 12-step group or meeting. We're just some compulsive eaters sitting down to have a chat with you. So we look forward to hearing from you this week and talking with you next week. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.